Chapter 2 Silver Dragon's Struggle. Takal pushed her way out the church's front doors. Frustration burned in her pale blue eyes. Her clawed fingers balled into a fist and slammed against the side of the building. I will no longer preach virtue. I will practice it. She stomped down Samasla's stone streets, disrupting puddles on her way to the commercial district. Water splashed onto her scaly silver skin with every heavy step. Priest's clothes struggled to cover her 6-foot-tall body. Her deep voice boomed, flooding Samasla's streets with complaints. I am a dragonborn, a proud servant of the Golden Father. Divine Auramut, I swear by your name to crush complacency and cruelty. No longer will I waste my days excusing sins and soothing the conscience of the corrupt. Dragonborn are clans of dragon-like humans. They are Dragonborn are clans of dragon-like humanoids that often serve greater dragons. They are covered in colorful scales and generally taller than humans. Each of their hands has 3 clawed fingers and a thumb. They lack wings or a tail, however, they have dragon-like breath weapons and elemental resistances. These powers, along with their scale color, vary based on their ancestry. Generally, their lifestyle does not lead to long life, but some of the oldest Dragonborn are around 80 years old. An upset snort escaped her square snout, creating a cool mist. Takal took a sturdy wooden bridge over the canal, separating Samasla's residential and commercial districts. She moved into the bustling streets, her complaints retreating into her head. I may lack a dragon's wings or tail, but I have a dragon's pride. By Auramut, a silver dragon's ice flows through my veins. I cannot waste my life in the clergy, content with watching exploitation. The commercial district unfolded in front of Takal. She noted stalls selling porous fruit and honeyed meat. Others had poultry and spices. None of these caught the Dragonborn's attention, so she stormed past them, still rationalizing. Righteousness is crushing the cruel. Propping up the weak only gives villains an easier target. I'll strike down evil and anyone complacent in the cruelty. Suddenly noticing her destination, Takal turned towards a weaponsmith's store. The hammering of an anvil was audible from outside. She ducked down to avoid hitting her head on the doorway. Once inside, she rapidly surveyed the shop, snout traveling in a circle as she scanned the available products. Hammer clanging was interrupted by a gruff voice. A priest, and a scaly one at that. Dragons don't need armor, and priests don't need weapons. I suggest a different forge if you need a holy symbol. Takal looked down at the stocky man. His face was dominated by a bushy beard. The only significant skin showing was a bulbous nose and rosy cheeks. She cleared her throat. I would like armor and weapons. I intend to leave Simasla. The dwarf responded with a gravelly voice. If it'll get you out of town, good. I just got some fine steel from House Leonius. What can you pay? Dwarfs are short, stocky humanoids that typically come from the mountains. Their culture has strong clan traditions and connections to the earth. They're famous for their miners and smiths. Height varies, but typically the top of their heads are level with a human's chest. They live to be 350 years old. I just got some fine steel from House Leonius. What can you pay? Takal dropped a small sack on the countertop. Months of odd jobs and eating stale bread had earned the Dragonborn these modest savings. The dwarf sorted the coins into neat stacks and pushed a column of copper back into the bag. At this price, I can outfit you with splint. The cost'll cover a weapon and shield. Take the rest and spend it anywhere else. Can't work with you breathing fire down me neck. Takal left her dimensions along with the change. Takal left her dimensions and took the change. Before departing, she spent time trialing weapons. She noted the feeling of their weight in her hand, imagining the sensation of swinging and striking with each. Her final choice was a morning star and a plain shield. The shield was made of wood, with a steel rim riveted to it. The Morning Star was made of a sturdy wooden shaft and a heavy iron ball. Metal spikes protruded from all angles, giving the weapon a frightening appearance. Satisfied, Takal laid her choices on the counter and crossed the street. She found a modest wooden building. A gaudy, hand-painted sign over the door read, Draenard Emporium for Travelers. Takal was ushered in by an average man with shaggy brown hair. This is my newest little hobby. No matter the time of year, travel can be taxing. Orc raiders may have calmed down, but there are still wolves and vulpines running up and down the praetor's back. I'm Brian, by the way. Inside, a broad woman busied herself at the counter. Various pins and scissors stuck out of her fuchsia locks. She looked up from the book of hairstyles as Takal entered the shop. Another customer. That's uncommon. Brushing back brown bangs, Brian retorted, It'd be more common if you didn't greet the guests with that sort of attitude. The brash beautician spun small scissors around her index finger. I always treat customers with respect. You don't always do anything, replied Brian in a huff. Takal tapped the man on his shoulder. What exactly does this establishment carry? Turning around, Brian's expression softened. We have a wide selection of traveling supplies, containers, tools, even food. Takal frowned. I don't have much to spare. Her clawed hands reached into the coin purse, producing 2 fistfuls of copper coins. The beautician's sarcasm cut through the conversation. Another big spender, huh? Unfazed, Brian responded, In this establishment, even the poorest traveler gets treated like a noble. You know how I am. I wish I didn't, she replied humorlessly, returning to her book. With the skeptic silence, the shopkeeper tended to his customer. Okay, we'll focus on the essentials. He consulted a small list by the counter. Backpacks, bedroll, rope, water skin, mess kit, field food. Yeah, that should do it. I think you'll find the mess kit is very versatile. It's a metal box of cutlery that clamps together. Quite convenient for storage. Takal snorted, quickly quieting Brian. What options do you have for food? I want to avoid anything that must be reheated. Our stockroom has dried fruit, cured meats, preserved poultry, smoked cheese, salt and vegetables, and local sweets, too. Takal folded her arms, considering each item's weight and her travel time. After a period of deliberation, she chose a diet heavy on meat and devoid of sweets. Some fruits and vegetables were included as a matter of obligation, not preference. Brian wrote down each food item in detail. Fuchsia hair draped over his shoulder as the beautician read the note. Still writing, brother? Yes, I'm writing my last will and testament because you'll be the death of me. Takal watched the argument grow with each trip into the storeroom. Upon receiving the last piece of food, she dropped her money and hastily left the store. The dragonborn sorted her bags outside the shop. Though muffled, the squabble was still audible behind her. Takal returned to the smith, her ear holes ringing. Upon seeing her, the dwarf groused, You did a fine job riling them up. Threatened to blow their shop down? Noticing the pack on Takal's back, the dwarf added, Well, you got what you needed. Take your armor and hit the road. The armor fit snugly over her scales. Rectangular strips were riveted onto a tough leather base. Flexible rings of chainmail covered Takal's elbows and knees. It's a little stuffy, commented the dragonborn. Picking up the wooden shield, she added, The shield is plain. I was hoping for something to strike fear into my enemies' hearts. Miffed, the dwarf replied, Better to be uncomfortable than alive. I build for function. If you want paint splashed on your shield, do it yourself. Sensing the end of the transaction, Takal bowed and exited. By sunset, she was prepared to leave Simasla. The canals were colored burning red by the setting sun. Small pangs of nostalgia welled up involuntarily inside her. She recalled her upbringing in the slums of the city, commonly referred to as the Bee. Long-forgotten faces filled her mind. Takal remembered the planks Takal remembered the pranks and petty crimes of her youth. She wondered if any of those delinquents had mended their ways. Perhaps they would be willing to join my righteous venture. Clearing her mind, she put those thoughts behind her. The steel strips of her new armor gleamed in the sunlight. Around her neck was a metal band that connected part of her past to her future path. One end held a prayer wheel filled with scriptures from her time in the clergy. The other side, ended in a holy symbol of Oromut, the god whose path she now walks. Takalik inspected the shield in her left hand. The wooden center was now a combination of blue and yellow. She smiled at the sloppy rendition of the golden dragon god. Bringing her shield arm to her chest, Takal spoke to the soil. Golden Father, this is my pledge. I will eradicate evil. My weapon will wage war against the complacent and contemptible. Those who condone oppression will suffer my blistering breath. By this oath of vengeance, I swear to serve as your paladin. Paladin, someone who fights for their beliefs, especially those who have support from a deity.